Welcome to the Science of Hockey, the podcast where we break down the science behind ice hockey. I'm the analyst, your host, and every week we explore the data, research, and evidence that shape how we play, train, and understand the game of hockey. From biomechanics to performance psychology, we take you beyond the rink and into the research lab, giving you insights that go beyond hearsay and into what really makes the difference on the ice. Whether you're a player, a coach, a parent, or just someone passionate about the sport, we're here to bring you scientifically backed information in a language that's friendly and easy to understand. So grab your skates and let's dive into the science of hockey. Hello, hockey enthusiasts. This is the Science of Hockey. I'm your host, the analyst. In this episode, we explore the injury landscape for amateur players, focusing on knee and shoulder injuries, and dive into the challenges of finding well-fitting protective gear for diverse athletes.
All right, let's hit the ice. We're going deep on hockey injuries and the gear, that's supposed to keep players safe.
Yeah.
We've got some research. It's called Risk Factors.
Yeah.
Based on analysis of injury mechanism and protective equipment for ice hockey amateur players.
Okay.
Pretty long title.
Yeah.
But it looks at amateur players in South Korea. I'm curious to see, if this lines up with what we see in other leagues around the world.
Yeah, it's a good chance to look at, those differences. You see a lot of research on professional athletes.
Right.
But the amateur level, it's just a whole nother set of dynamics, training, experience, even access to equipment.
Absolutely. So our mission, I guess you could call it, today is to figure out, the most common injuries in hockey, see how they're happening, and explore this sometimes tricky relationship between protective gear and actually staying safe on the ice.
Yeah, and this research is really interesting because it looks at the injury mechanisms, the specific ways those injuries happen. And that can help us figure out how to prevent them.
Right. Okay, so let's dig in. I think most people know that hockey's fast. There are collisions.
Yeah.
But how common are injuries, really even among amateur players, people who aren't playing pro?
Well, this research, they found that 60% of the amateur players they looked at, they had at least one injury.
Wow.
And not just like little bumps and bruises.
60%, huh?
Yeah.
That's a lot. So where are these injuries happening? What parts of the body are getting hit the hardest?
So they found that knee injuries, those were the most common, and then shoulder and ankle injuries.
Okay.
And here's where it gets kind of cool. That's pretty similar to what you see in professional leagues.
Oh, interesting. So are there certain movements in hockey that just, no matter your skill level, kind of put those joints at risk?
Yeah, I think so. Think about just skating, right? The strides, the turns, stopping quickly, all that stresses your knees and ankles. A lot.
And then you add in, the checking, the boards. Yeah. It's no surprise shoulders are taking a hit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But even though the injuries, like where they happen, might be the same, the causes, like how they happen, could be different.
Oh, so you're saying amateur players are getting injured in ways that, like, the pros aren't?
Possibly, yeah. Amateur players, they might not have the same training years of experience.
Right.
They react differently to those forces on the ice.
That makes sense. And the study, it said that players with less than 5 years of experience were less likely to be injured. Which seems weird at first, right? You'd think beginners would be more clumsy, more likely to get hurt.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive. But remember those injury mechanisms?
Oh, right.
It might not be about how often you fall.
Okay.
It's about the types of falls, how your body reacts.
I see. So a pro, they might, brace themselves for a fall.
Right.
An amateur might, I don't know.
Whoa!
Just hit the ice.
Yeah, and this is where the research gets really specific, They found that most of the injuries came from collisions with other players or the rink itself.
Yeah, it is a contact sport.
But here's the really interesting part. They talked to players, right, beginners, experienced players, and they saw a difference in how they reacted to contact. So less experienced skaters, even after a little bump, they'd lose their balance more often and fall in a way that made them more likely to get hurt.
So it's not just being tough enough to take a hit.
Right.
It's about, being agile enough to keep your balance and not fall in a weird way.
Exactly. Like a dancer, on the ice.
Yeah. Like a hockey ballerina.
And that brings us to the gear.
Yeah.
You'd think more padding, less injuries, right?
Of course.
But it's not always that simple.
This is where the gear becomes the enemy, right?
Yeah, kind of. Because players are picking their equipment based on a few things.
Like what?
Well, obviously protection, right? but also cost and how big it is, how it fits, and that's where it gets kind of tricky. Because those things can actually play a role in those injuries we're talking about.
Okay, I'm following. So
Yeah.
what's the most popular gear? And how does that connect back to those common injury spots?
So shin guards, pants, and shoulder pads. Those were top of the list, which makes sense. Knees, hips, shoulders.
Right, protect the vulnerable spots.
But there's a catch. The study found that some of the gear, especially the stuff made for Western body types, it didn't fit Asian players well.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
especially shin guards and helmets.
So ill-fitting gear could actually make you more likely to get hurt.
Think about it. A shin guard that's too loose, it moves around when you're playing,
Wow.
and then bam, your knee's exposed.
It's like a helmet that's too big, and it's always like falling down over your eyes.
Exactly. And
Okay.
it wasn't just shin guards, helmets too, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
Head injuries are serious. And they even found some players were trying to fix the fit themselves, adding tape, bands.
Yeah,
That's not good. It means something's wrong.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So fit matters.
Mhm.
But what about comfort? If you're always messing with your gear,
Mhm.
it's got to affect how you play, right?
Yeah, discomfort, it can be distracting. They found some gear like elbow pads were too restrictive.
Yeah.
So players, they might not wear it right or even take it off, which defeats the purpose.
Totally. So safety and performance, comfort, got to have all three.
Yeah.
But before we, get into how to find that balance, I think it's important to say that gear, it's important,
Yeah.
but it's not like magic.
Yeah,
right?
oh, it's not a force field.
Exactly. So prevention, that's just as important.
Right. Training, conditioning, good skating skills, those things help you avoid dangerous situations.
It's not just patting yourself up. It's about being strong, agile, aware.
Exactly. And this study, they talked about safety education, especially for amateur players. Knowing the risks, how to avoid bad situations, being aware on the ice, that can make a huge difference.
Like defensive driving.
Right.
The best car in the world won't help if you're not paying attention.
Exactly. Be proactive, not just reactive.
Right. So we've learned a few things so far. Even at the amateur level, hockey, it's risky.
It is.
We've got to understand those common injuries, knees, shoulders, ankles.
Yeah.
That helps us focus on prevention and protection.
Yep.
And gear, it's important, but it's got to fit right. Can't get in the way of how you play, got to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Got to find that sweet spot where protection and performance work together.
Yeah, that's the key.
That's the key.
Finding that balance.
Yeah.
Okay, so second period. We were talking about that balance at the end of part one
Right.
with the gear.
Yeah.
How do we make it work better? How do we make players want to wear it?
Yeah, because you don't want to feel like you're, wearing too much,
Yeah,
sacrificing speed out there.
right.
It's got to be protection and performance and comfort all together.
Yeah, you hit it. That's the challenge, right? And that's where the design comes in, the technology.
Oh, yeah.
How do we actually make gear that can handle all that?
Yeah. So what's cool in that space? Like what gets you excited about, the future of gear?
Well, the materials are getting really interesting.
Uh-huh.
Traditionally, you think hockey pads, it's mostly foam.
Right.
And foam, it does a decent job, absorbing impact.
Yeah.
But it can be bulky. It's not that flexible and not breathable.
Yeah, not breathable.
Yeah. So.
Do you ever have that problem, like getting too hot,
Oh, yeah.
in a game and affecting your focus?
Absolutely, yeah. It's hard to stay focused when you're like overheated and
Yeah.
you feel like you're just weighed down. But the cool thing is now they're using new stuff.
Oh, right.
Like gels that can take an impact and polymers that are super lightweight.
Yeah.
And they actually protect you better and they're thinner and lighter and you can move more.
So you could be like just as protected, maybe even more protected,
Yeah.
but you don't feel like you're, in a suit of armor.
Yeah, exactly.
That's huge.
Especially for like your shoulders and elbows, right? You need to be able to move your arms to stick handle, to shoot.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that with those like old bulky pads.
Like those old football helmets.
Yeah.
Just like massive and hard to move in. It's amazing how things have changed.
Speaking of helmets, that's another area that's getting really cool.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, we talked about head injuries. They're serious, even for amateurs.
Yeah.
And those ill-fitting helmets, they were a big problem in this study.
Yeah, especially for the players they were looking at.
Right. So to try and fix that, they're using 3D scanning now.
Oh, wow.
They can actually make a helmet to fit your head perfectly.
So it's not just like one size fits all anymore.
Nope. They want it to fit snug, no pressure points, no gaps, where it could not protect you.
That's so cool.
And they even have helmets with sensors now.
I've heard about those.
Yeah.
So like a black box for your head, right?
Yeah.
You, like see how hard you got hit.
Yeah, and that's important because then, if you need to, check for a concussion, stuff like that, that data can really help.
But it's not just the head, right? We were talking about knees, shoulders, all those vulnerable spots.
They're working on those too.
Okay.
They're looking at materials that can actually change how stiff they are when you get hit.
What? Like it can sense how hard you're hit.
Yeah. It adapts, so you get extra protection right when you need it.
It's amazing.
And for knee pads, they're trying to make them absorb those twisting forces better,
Yeah.
Because that's how you get ligament injuries.
Right. So all this cool stuff, how does it actually get from, the lab to the ice, like to the players?
Well, it's a lot of teamwork. You got scientists, engineers, designers, and of course the players themselves. You got to test it out, get feedback, keep making it better and better.
What are some of the challenges there?
Well, cost is a big one. New tech, it's expensive. And we saw in the study, players think about cost.
Right.
So it's got to be affordable.
Yeah, everyone needs to be able to get good gear, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then it's got to actually work on the ice.
Yeah,
It might look great in the lab.
Right.
But how does it handle sweat? All the hits, the wear and tear?
Yeah, it's got to be a real world thing, not just a fancy idea.
Exactly. And that's where this study helps.
Okay.
By showing us what amateur players are struggling with, the fit, the comfort, it tells us what we need to focus on to make better gear that people actually want to use.
So the innovation has got to be driven by, what the players need.
Absolutely. It's got to make a difference in the game.
Yeah. So for someone who's listening, maybe they play hockey.
Yeah.
Maybe they're just interested in safety.
Right.
What should they take away from all this?
I think the big thing is gear's important.
Yeah.
It's part of playing safe. But it's not just about, slapping on any old pads.
Yeah.
The right gear, fitted properly, that's what helps prevent injuries.
Yeah, like a seatbelt, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be adjusted right to actually work.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it's just going to hurt when you crash.
And we're going to see even better gear in the future,
Yeah.
Technology is always changing.
But gear's just one piece of the puzzle, right?
Yeah. You need the training, the conditioning, the skills. It's like building a house.
Okay.
You got to have a good foundation.
Yeah.
And don't forget the mental side of it. Being aware of what's going on around you, making good decisions, respecting the game.
Being smart on the ice.
Yeah. Thinking ahead, anticipating what might happen.
Yeah. Sometimes the best way to stay safe is to just, not be where the danger is going to be.
Right. So it's all connected.
Yeah.
Take care of your body, your mind, have the right gear, and be smart. It's all about that safety-first mindset, on and off the ice.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. All right, final period. Back to hockey injuries and the gear. And, it's not just about, the player and their choices, right? Safety's got to be a team effort. The whole hockey world has to be on board.
Yeah, it's a whole system. Equipment, coaching, the rules, everything's connected. It's always changing too.
So even with all the new tech, the fancy gear, there's more to it than just that.
For sure. And this study, it shows that there are these other layers of safety, that go beyond the player themselves. Like the coaches, for example, they have a big impact.
Yeah, think about when you're learning, right? The coaches, they teach you the right way to do things, how to skate, how to shoot. That's got to be part of it, right?
Absolutely. Building those good habits early, it helps you avoid getting hurt, and if you do get hit, you're more prepared.
And it's not just the physical stuff. It's the mindset too, right?
Right. Keeping your head up, being aware, making smart choices, even when it's intense.
Like driving, right? You got to be scanning the road, thinking ahead.
Exactly. Anticipate the hazards. And as players get better, you got to keep reinforcing those habits, keep learning about safety, make sure the training is minimizing risk.
So it's always learning, always adapting.
Yeah, it never stops. And the trainers, they're a big part of this too. Right?
Yeah, the trainers, they're right there with you, keeping you in shape. Yeah, spotting those little problems before they become big problems.
Right. They see those little aches, those things that could get worse if you don't pay attention.
So communication is key, right? Player, coach, trainer, got to all be talking, got to be on the same page. And the referees too, they play a role.
Oh, huge role. They got to keep it safe, keep it fair. They call the penalties, talk to the players, set the tone for the game. It all matters.
It's like, when things get rough out there,
Yeah.
tempers flare, it's the ref who's got to step in and say, hey, safety first.
Right. Remind everyone what's important.
Yeah.
And that brings us to something that's always being talked about, debated, body checking.
Oh, yeah.
This study, it was mostly amateurs, not as much checking. But it makes you think, what is the role of checking and how does it affect safety?
Right. Especially when you think about head injuries. This study, they didn't see a lot of those.
Right.
But we know concussions, that's a big problem in hockey.
Yeah. And it's tough, right? There are good arguments on both sides. Some people say get rid of checking and you'll have way fewer head injuries.
And others say no, checking's part of the game. It makes it physical, it's strategic.
And there's no easy answer.
Yeah.
It's got to be an ongoing conversation. Players, coaches, doctors, researchers, everyone needs to be involved.
The goal is to find that middle ground, right? Yeah. Keep hockey safe, but don't change the game too much. Protect the players, but keep the spirit of the game.
Exactly. And we'll probably keep adjusting that balance as we learn more.
Speaking of learning more, this study, it was those amateur players in South Korea. That's cool, but how about other groups?
Yeah.
Like younger players.
Right.
Women.
Right. Different groups have different needs.
You can't just have one approach for everyone.
Right.
Different ages, different genders, different bodies, different rules.
Like in youth hockey, no checking, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to change the injuries.
In kids, they're still growing. Their bodies are more vulnerable.
Right.
And we saw with the gear, sometimes it doesn't fit right. That's got to be an issue for women too.
Yeah. Finding gear that's actually made for your body, it shows we need more research, more understanding of what causes injuries in different groups. The more we know, the better we can protect everyone.
So bottom line, what do we want people to remember from this deep dive?
Safety in hockey, it's everyone's job.
Yeah.
It's not just about wearing the right gear. It's about creating that culture of, being aware, preventing injuries, always getting better.
Keep talking, keep asking questions, keep learning.
Exactly. Safety, it's not a finish line. It's a journey. We can always do more.
Well said. And to everyone listening, keep learning, keep the conversation going, keep hockey fun and safe. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for tuning in to the Science of Hockey. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share it with your friends, teammates, or anyone who loves hockey as much as you do. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment to let us know what you liked, what you'd like to hear next, or any questions you have. Your feedback helps us make the show even better. Until next time, keep your skates sharp, your mind open, and keep chasing the science behind the game.